of urban life in cities worldwide. The course will combine practical, hands-on experience directly in cities, alongside academic inputs from the network of foundation experts, politicians, consultants, professors, developers. They'll learn how to interpret data using the most up-to-date digital tools in the quest to improve a sustainable quality of urban life.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this public debate on healthy cities, organised by the Norman Foster Foundation and supported by Sanitas, part of the International Healthcare Trust, Bupa. What brings us here today is a very simple question. Can architects and urban designers help to keep people healthy? Can they be, as Dr. Maria Neira from the World Health Organization suggested in our first debate, can they be part of a team of preventative health professionals that can keep us healthier into the 21st century? My name is Catherine Cummings. I am fortunate to be the Sustainability Director with Sanitas, and we got involved with this question because it links directly to sustainability and to the issue of how we keep people healthy and promote good health and well-being. My company's objective, when we first started collaborating with the Norman Foster Foundation, was to look beyond traditional healthcare and think about how we really do go about not waiting for people to get sick, but keeping them healthy. And we knew that to do that, we needed to do it working with many other professionals from different sectors. This is the only way that we can achieve better health for all, understanding that there is only one health, and our health is inextricably linked to the health of the environments where we live. So this is what led us to create this cycle of Healthy Cities debates, and in this third of our debates today, we will shine a spotlight on healthy buildings, especially healthy hospitals. Because, as we also say in sustainability, we want to make sure that we're part of the solution to climate change, not part of the problem. So let me share with you today how tonight's event will unfurl. First, we will hear from three amazing experts who will share with us different aspects related to the topic of healthy buildings and healthy cities. Dr. Marina Romanello, Executive Director of the Lancet Countdown, specialist in global health and climate change research. Followed by Mario Cucinella, founder of Mario Cucinella Architects in Italy, and Nigel Dancy, Senior Executive Partner at Foster & Partners in the UK, with a wide range of expertise in education, research, and medical facilities. Each of our three speakers will share a short presentation, then we'll have a roundtable discussion when we'll also be inviting questions from the audience, so please do not hesitate to put your hand up and ask any of those juicy questions that you've always wanted to ask. After this, we will then pass the baton to Joseph Allen. Joseph will give us information on how his work is developing in the University of Harvard as director of the Healthy Buildings program. After that, Sir Norman Foster and Yolanda Edwuru, Chief Sustainability Officer in Sanitas, will join him on stage to talk about how this first cycle of debates has developed and if we have achieved the change and the awareness that we intended and how we can collaborate working together. What we can already say is that our collaboration to date has helped us anchor an important sustainability program that we've been running in Sanitas since 2015. Our program, like these debates, is called Healthy Cities. And every year, we challenge everyone in Spain to take up a physical activity challenge. Pretty standard for a healthcare company. But what we do is we promise to invest in urban regeneration for every person who completes that challenge. We often work with local councils to help them plant more trees and support them in creating more green spaces. So if you want to join the challenge, now you know, the more you walk, the more we can plant health. Participation is free because we know we have to go beyond conversations, beyond debates, and also deliver access to everyone to participate in making a change for healthier cities. And we also know that tree planting is only one part of the solution. And that is precisely why we come together today, to learn from and to work with others. So that said, without further ado, I will now invite our first speaker, Marina, to come on stage and to help us understand the importance of healthier buildings for healthier cities. Thank you.
Hi everyone, what an enormous honor it is to be here, and thank you so much for inviting me both to the Foster Foundation, to Sanitas. I'm delighted to be here. I'm delighted to be here in Madrid as well, which is a city I absolutely adore. So as you've heard, I'm the Executive Director for the Lancet Countdown on Health and Climate Change, and hopefully once the slides show up, maybe I have to pass them. Oh, there you go. I'm going to tell you a bit about the work that we do at the Lancet Countdown and who we are. So in essence, the Lancet Countdown is a big research collaboration. We are an academic collaboration funded by the Wellcome Trust. And we bring together in our global network 57 contributing organizations, but worldwide something about 100 organizations with about 300 researchers that contribute to our work. So we pull in experts from all disciplines, from public health experts, physicians, physicists, engineers, and architects, to understand the interconnections between health and climate change, and to produce a series of indicators where we track that evolving nexus between climate change and health. The report that we published last November, published just ahead of COP, had perhaps the most concerning finding of our almost 10 years of monitoring, in that it found that we're facing already today record health risks and record health impacts from climate change across the 15 indicators in which we're monitoring the health impacts of climate change. 10 reached new record high levels of hazards or impacts in the latest year of data. And we're seeing things like record high levels of exposures of vulnerable populations to heat waves that are threatening their health and their lives. We're seeing record environmental suitability for the transmission of deadly infectious diseases like dengue or malaria. We're also seeing record exposure to droughts and floods. And we're seeing that these impacts are occurring all at once, and these risks are compounding one another to generate a bit of a perfect storm for health. But we know that there's a lot that we can do about this. We know that there's a lot that we can still do, firstly, to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and prevent these hazards and these risks from rising further. But there's also a lot that we can do today to already prevent those risks in transforming into health impacts. And that's what adaptation looks like. We know that by building better cities, ensuring that our buildings are built around these changing environments, we can prevent much of that heat exposure. We can ensure that we avoid floods in urban centers. We can prevent exposure to these infectious diseases. The good news that we found in the report, and there weren't many, is precisely coming from cities and from urban authorities. We see that cities, perhaps as opposed to what often happens at the national level, are taking the lead in understanding and evaluating the risks that people are facing from climate change, with record high levels of cities responding to the survey done by what was known before as the, or is now known as the CDP, the Carbon Disclosure Project. And we're seeing that more and more cities all around the world are starting to assess the risks and to start to respond to climate change in ways that are health-centered. However, we still see big delays in action. And there's an example that I really like, that is, what are we doing about urban green spaces, and particularly how we respond to heat, which is one of the most pressing issues from climate change. We've seen that in the latest year of data, our heat-related mortality of vulnerable populations has increased by about 147% with respect to the 1990s. So heat is becoming an increasingly pressing issue, particularly in cities, particularly in urban centers that become really hot during heat events because of the urban heat island effect. And we know that there's a lot that we can do in terms of cooling cities through means that are sustainable, including increasing the green and the blue space surfaces in cities. And we know that urban green spaces offers huge co-benefits for health. We know that they don't only offer local cooling and local shading, but we have very good data from epidemiological studies showing that exposure to urban green spaces decreases all-cause mortality, it improves mental health, it provides spaces for recreation, and it makes cities more livable, it reduces air pollution, and improves quality of life altogether. So they're generally cost-effective interventions. Obviously, that depends a bit on the location, but generally they're quite cost-effective interventions and good for the planet, good for our health. However, we're seeing that there's not enough action being taken by urban centers in terms of greening our cities. And urban greenness has remained practically static since we started monitoring in 2015. And what happens on the flip side of this is that people are starting to self-adapt to the higher temperatures. So we're oftentimes going towards maladaptive responses, like increasing our use of air conditioning to shield ourselves from the heat. Air conditioning, super effective in terms of preventing heat exposure and preventing the worst health impacts of heat. But obviously, it increases enormously the demands on our energy systems. It puts pressure to energy systems, which often means that it increases energy poverty or increases energy bills. It also means that it increases the urban heat island effect through the waste heat that it generates. So a maladaptive response that is increasingly being taken up because of the lack of good adaptation on other fronts. The bad news is that these health impacts that we're seeing, and with these delays in adaptation, we're probably heading towards a very dangerous future. We're currently at about 1.3 degrees of global mean temperature rise, and we're currently headed towards 2.7 degrees given current policies and actions. And even if we manage to limit global mean heating to 2 degrees by the end of the century, in 20 years, we would already see sharp increases in every one of the risks that we would be facing. So this tells us that adaptation is urgent, but is absolutely insufficient to prevent the worst health impacts of climate change, and we absolutely need to mitigate, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and ensure that we keep our planet within safety boundaries. The energy system is the biggest single contributor to climate change, and the vast majority of our greenhouse gas emissions comes from the energy system. Despite the availability of green energy solutions, still about 80% of our global energy comes from fossil fuels, which are highly polluting, and obviously the main contributors to climate change. And cities contribute the vast majority of those emissions. About 70% of all greenhouse gas emissions comes from the consumption of energy in cities. So there's a lot that at the city level we can do to stop emissions and to transition rapidly towards a health-promoting future. Now, the implications of energy is not only for climate change, but also the direct health impacts of our unhealthy energy consumption patterns. We estimate about 2.1 million deaths occurring every year due to exposure to outdoor air pollution coming from fossil fuel consumptions, with increasingly high burdens of disease, particularly in areas that are still heavily dependent on fossil fuels. Road transportation still dependent heavily on liquid fossil fuels, being one of the main contributors to this air pollution. And something that is slightly, perhaps unrelated, but I think it runs at the core of this, is that we're still so absolutely dependent on fossil fuels to meet our energy needs, which we need to meet to hold healthy lives, that our energy systems depend on fossil fuels even under sharp fossil fuel fluctuations and sharp energy price fluctuations. And the reason why this is important was clearly exemplified in the last couple of years. Following the war in Ukraine, as you will all know, energy prices rocketed, mostly because of the changes in fossil fuel markets globally. And what that meant is that our governments had to allocate enormous amounts of funds to keeping energy affordable because we still depend on fossil fuels primarily. As a result, we spent $1.4 trillion globally in 2022 in net fossil fuel subsidies. This is often taxpayers' money that goes to subsidizing fossil fuels. And the interesting thing is that in 55% of those countries that we monitored, we allocated more than 10% of our health budget to fossil fuel subsidies. And in 27% of countries, we allocated more to subsidizing fossil fuels than to healthcare. So we're fueling the addiction to fossil fuels, and this is costing our budgets, and this is undermining our capacity to enable a sustainable future as well. So at this point, we have the technology to respond to climate change. We know how to build healthier cities. We know how to build healthier energy systems. We have the technology and we have the budget. So at this point, it's pretty clear that whether we respond or not to climate change, whether we deliver a healthy future or not, is not a technical or financial issue, it's entirely a political issue. So with that, I thank you very much for your attention.
Hello. I just want to thanks for this invitation. It's always a pleasure to come to have this kind of conversation. Well, I just want to show you some detail of this problem healthy in two projects. One is a large hospital in Cremona, which is south of Milan, and it's about to design an hospital that has also a landmark for the city, but the opportunity also to creating a public space. So, you know, historically, hospital was a pavilions in the park, and the park was part of the city. You know, the people can enjoy that park. So, I thought the idea was, I'm going to hospital not only for the cure, and not only because I'm a patient, but because maybe Sunday I'm going walking in the park of the hospital. So, become a public destination, not hostile. It's not something against people, but it's a part of the life, a civic part of the life of people. So, and also take care not only of the people, of the patients, but also for the people working on the hospital. This hospital is 500 beds, 2,500 people working there, plus visitors. So I think in that case, we designed the ground floor is a sort of a gallery. Then you can have your shop, there's a restaurant, there's a bar, there's a supermarket, there's people working for 10 hours. They maybe need to do some shopping before go home. And on the other side of the hospital is a kindergarten, a residential for families. So it's a sort of facilities for the community. It's not only a technical building, it's about creating something around the building. But what is a detail, but it's so important in the hospital. It's not only about being architecture is okay, and then you can, you know, we discuss about too many issues, but one issue is to managing the room of the patient. So normally, you saw, is this the first slide? You see, normally it's like this, it's a corridor and a toilet, and then the bed is behind. No? You can't see the patient. You need to open the door, get inside, check in. Normally, okay, there's a lot of digital tools around a patient, but also the visual is still. So we tilt the room, and then you can see the position of the toilets and the bed. So the nursery, he can see, or she can see the patient without open the door, or if open the door, don't need to disturb, but he can see. And also you can transform from one single bed to two bedroom or intensive care, which is one of the problems we get in Italy, I'm sure in many countries. Not enough room for intensive care. But normally there are, like in Italy, hospitals have 10 intensive care, but then in that case the COVID was needed for hundreds. So, and the way you're transforming the unit is very important to be adapting to different solutions. So that was the key of the competition. We won that competition, now we're starting the final drawings, but one of the things was really appreciated is the attention to room patient, the way you organize, and the public space around. And that's what the people see from the room, which I think was very important. Now you can sit and then watch in the park and watching greenery. I mean, as you say in the previous, this visual relationship with plants is very important for the psychological for people. No? We do another hospital in Milan with the courtyard. No? Every courtyard is a different plants, and then it's a bow window, so the patient can go almost cantilevering on the garden, and this relation between life is quite important. But also, we just make a little analysis about how much daylighting gets through the building and what the people on the bed see outside. So we're just testing these things because we want to give you a value and numbers about this. And that's what I think was very, very appreciating for the way you design the new facilities. And then the hospital is a park, this is the main entrance, but in the same time is integrating on this landscape. And Cremona is very well known for the Stradivari violin, which is, you're going in Cremona, then you go in the street and then people singing and music. In the medieval time is the high towers built in Italy, or maybe one of the highest in Europe. So they have a landmark, but they're looking for, okay, a new hospital, but also the hospital can be a new landmark for the city, you know, and that is a countryside almost, is close to the city, you know, and that are the three main. I just make a very short presentation, but just to give you the elements also when design school, you know, one is the environment, the space, and the city community. If you put in these indicators together and measure your building, you really get a chart to understand how much you working on the environment, how much you working in the flexibility of the space, and how much this building is connecting with the city community. You know? And I think this is go over the architecture, is the way you really approach the buildings. You know? It's not only an aesthetic approach, it's how we connecting things. You know? But I wanted just to show just a very small project. I like to be an architect, and you know, when you're working for a long time, then you like to be a big project. No? It's okay, it's nice. But sometimes we're working with many no-profit organizations and make a very small project, you know? Because in the end, all the philosophy we made about sustainability, you need to put it down in the ground, and also a small thing can be change the life of people. So we're working, and we just opening 2 weeks ago with an association. They provide food for poor people, so like a canteen. So they're serving 700 meals every day to people who can't afford. But now the problem is there's not only people with no work. Now the new poor people is the people who have a job, a very low income. So you can find this kind of a change in society. No, it's not only people that don't, you know, they don't have anything. There's people who have one work, very bad pay, and they go to this place. But there are people, they go to this place, but they don't have a teeth to eat. And kids, they don't have a very sickness on teeth. How you can do? You can provide food, but you need to provide dentist clinic. You know? So we opened this place for kids in a very unprivileged area of Bologna, very, very difficult suburbia. And then is thanks to Dentisti Solidari, you know, is made by the volunteer of university, the student in the last years of university for dentists, and from professionals. They just give 1 day amount, 2 days amount to student, they working there, and provide service free for kids and people need cure for that. So what happened there is we designed something very nice. I'm always thinking that whatever is the budget, the best thing we can do is design the best architecture we can, because it doesn't mean it's cheap, not to be nice. And I think also when you bring kids in a place like this, you know, they need to be nice, you know, a nice curving wall and simple, and then all the room is very well equipped by supporting by company. They give this, and I think this is a little things inside of a very large neighborhood, which is difficult problems. But the fact is there is the sign that maybe something change. And I think one of the points I'm more and more working I like to say, okay, sustainability is an issue, and we know how to do. We have knowledge, we have information, everything. What is missing, I still misunderstand. But I feel it's not only about technology, and the problem is the human being. How we can transform this in a sustainable city. For me, I was working in many different places in the world with the United Nations. In Gaza, we did things for refugees, with little things, but I think we save our cities by generosity. Generosity. We lost the contact with people, the generosity, understanding people, the gratitude. These kind of things is the base of how we can change our life in the city. It's not only about, we know many data, many information, but if we are not changing our attitude with the people, it will be very difficult to make the change. So I think this little work, it's very little things, but it's nice because it's a sign of generosity inside of a city which is trying to make better and try to help other people. If you don't help each other, it will be very difficult to sustain the transformation. Okay, thank you very much.
Good afternoon. It's a real honour to be here, and I thank the Norman Foster Foundation, and I thank our friends from Bupa. I'm going to show you some things that we've been doing in the practice of fostering partners. And I think there's a theme about, can architects make situation spaces better for patients in a hospital setting? Can you do things that are better by design? And 10 years ago, at one of our strategy board meetings, we decided to really think about hospitals in more detail. And we've been lucky enough to work around the world looking at some hospital projects and developing things and really trying to explore what are the key kind of elements that you can think about. I'm going to start off with Maggie's. So this is a hospital, it's a space in Manchester for Maggie's. It's a retreat for cancer patients. And they sit, and most of the ingredients that we think are important are here. So biophilia, plants, nature, natural ventilation, daylight, a sense of community, a sense of support in a difficult situation. A very small project, but some of the key elements are something that we learned from and actually then have influenced the projects we've done since. So we are firm believers the patient comes first as we think about hospitals. But we know it's important about the family members. It's an extremely stressful time for the patient and the family to visit the hospital. It's also important for the care team under huge amounts of pressure. Why can't they have daylight? Why can't they be in a better work environment? Why can't they perform better and have a better situation to work in? So we think about the patient first, and we think about the care team and the families all together as we start to think about our hospital projects. So this is the first project that we did. This is Iowa Children's Hospital. Somewhere in the Midwest, college football is like a religion. The stadium is packed, it's full, and with Norman, some of the first meetings, we said, well, surely we should build the new hospital away from the stadium, away from the noise, better access with ambulances. And there was a conversation about, is there a benefit to have the stadium perhaps overlooking, the hospital overlooking the stadium? We designed a children's viewing platform at the very top, so the children could watch the game. We worked through, and obviously it's probably one of the most emotive things. A children's hospital for me is very difficult. And there's also this thing about the generosity of spirit. And we built the hospital.
Some of these kids have been here for months and they don't know if or when they're coming home.
At the end of the first quarter, everyone in Kinnick, almost 70,000 plus, would turn and wave to the hospital.
What a simple concept yet so powerful. Like a lot of the good things that happen in life, they are pretty simple in their nature, but the power and the meaning of it is really significant.
Everyone up here had some tears in their eyes. It's like 70,000 people just turned around and were waving to us. They were all giving us that moment of, hey, we care about you too.
Architecture can make a difference, and it's incredible how that's really become a tradition in Iowa. This is one of Norman's sketches, but we talk about change a lot. We talk about how do you design a building that won't be finished for the next 5 years? How do you anticipate the technologies that are coming? We're seeing a huge, huge change in healthcare at the moment, and we're really trying to think about how do we design the hospital? How do we really embrace the patient? How do we really think about the care team? And how do we design for change? So this is in Philadelphia, but this is an idea about designing a more flexible floor plate for patient rooms, so that effectively, if we over-design the room slightly, every room can be an intensive care room. Do they know how many intensive care rooms they want at the beginning of the project? No, they don't. Will they know later in the piece in the first build? Yes. Can they then change it in the future to have more rooms? Yes, they possibly can. In our research, we also find that patients prefer to be in the same room and not moved. It's not nice to be moved from room to room. The care team takes 24 hours to change a room over from a cleaning point of view. And therefore, the idea is to have a building where, this is the stack of the building, you've got the operating theatres at the base, the rooms changing depending on the brief, depending on what the client would need as we got closer to the time, and also trying to design a building that's relevant for the next 60 years and not something that becomes obsolete because it hasn't been able to adapt to the changes. We then built a mock-up, full size out of cardboard, and we took 450 people through it of the care team to see the rooms, to test spaces, to test the circulation, to listen to them, to listen to their comments to see if we could improve what we were going to build. Lots of conversations about corridor widths, about the patient room sizes, about the location of the bathroom within the room. A lot of input from all these people. Some are surgeons, some of the care team, some of the people that will be cleaning the building in the future. And this is the final hospital. Interestingly, it sits right next door to a museum, and we're able to link the two together so you can actually go to the museum from the hospital to explore their collection. And then, as we showed you the magazines before, this is the lobby space, an incredible Maya Lin sculptural piece inside the lobby, but also there's a link to outside where we have biophilia and outside seating spaces for the care team, for the family members, and eventually for some of the patients too. Shows you some of the whole thing. There's a hospitality conversation about making it more welcoming, making it more calm when you come into the building as you work your way through. This is Lord Foster. I apologise. This is simulating a patient room. Norman's looking through an Apple Pro goggle set, and he's seeing 5 or 6 different interior rooms, and we're measuring him. And we're trying to figure out, and it wasn't just Norman, we actually used about 150 people from our office, from different disciplines, and also some of our clients. And we try to then understand about what makes you more calm within a patient room. Can you design a patient room which makes you calmer? Can you think, and the clues, obviously, daylight, important, colour, nature, the awareness of outside, artwork, timber, curves, softness. And that led us to the idea of a room, which we're developing at the moment for the Mayo Clinic, where we try and maximise the ability for the patient to control the environment they're in, but have the daylight, have the views, have the artwork, and really learn from the science that we have. We're seeing a dramatic curve at the moment in terms of healthcare and research. AI is coming on stream. We talk about robotics. We talk about incredible technologies in terms of cures for cancer. We're talking about algorithms for AI. We're talking about linking up data across the whole world. And then we were, 4 years ago, we started working with the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. And the Mayo Clinic, the whole conversation is about they're the best hospital system in the world, and they want to build a hospital of the future that can adapt to change. And there's a very visionary CEO called Dr. Fruja, who, inspirational, never satisfied, always wants to really think about the next steps in hospital planning. He phoned me up, and I haven't had many clients do this, and he said, I'm worried that the building won't be relevant in 20 years' time. Have we thought enough about the interface between robots and drones within the building? That's what he asked me to do. And then we're thinking about distribution systems, we're thinking about flexibility, we're thinking about, again, a sketch we talked to Norman about how do you design full flexibility. Can you have operating theatres that can go where patient rooms go? Can you move things around? This is a three-dimensional rendering to kind of show about a system that we've developed so that departments can change, the building can change over time. We can move around operating theatres, we can move patient rooms around. As the demand changes, we will be able to accommodate those changes within a very flexible building. And then finally, we talk about the technology, about the drones and the robots and how we're actually going to serve the building. And this project just started on site a few weeks ago and working very closely with the Mayo team, embracing the technology, thinking about the systems, thinking about the patient, and putting the patient in a situation where they're calm, they're comfortable in a wonderful space, and behind them, behind the walls, above the ceiling, but beneath the floor, is this incredible technology that helps to support them as they go through their difficult times and hopefully have a better outcome. That's my last slide. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much. There we go. Nigel, would you like to sit here? Marina. Amazing presentations. Thank you very much. Marina, I'm sure everybody would love to have a hospital like Cremona or the Mayo Clinic, but that's not always possible. You shared a lot of data. What's the minimum that we should start with when we're thinking about new buildings in cities from now on?
Well, I think that the minimum is understanding that when we build buildings, we're building the most fundamental determinants of health. We have to understand that health does not happen in hospitals. Health happens in the places that we spend most of our time, inside the buildings that we work, inside the buildings where we live, inside the hospitals once we are in hospitals, but it's determined mostly by the environments that we're exposed to most of our time. And for those living in urban environments, that's most of the time inside a building. So we have to understand that when we think about building design, we are not designing buildings to be pretty, we're not designing buildings only to be functional, we're designing buildings to be all of that while improving the health and well-being of those that are within them. So, as in most of the things that you'll always hear me say, I'm a huge advocate of putting people's health and people's well-being at the center of every single one of our interventions. And I think in terms of designing our built environment, people's health, people's well-being has to be one of the core metrics of how we go about designing those buildings.
Couldn't agree more. And Mario, you were talking about gratitude before, and if we could integrate that more, we could even have healthier buildings. Why aren't we integrating that more?
Well, it's about the nature, human nature, no? And I think we are really focused to make our better building, and we have much more knowledge about how to make it, and there's a lot of technology. And I see in hospital, there's a lot of diagnostic, there's a lot of machines. So it's really, we really know how to cure people very precisely. But in the end, also you need training people to get this kind of human relation. I always call it empathy. Empathy is one of the fundamental key how to make an hospitals work. Because machine sometimes is scary, you go inside of the tube and But then you need to really training, they need to be training people, but also architecture need to be some way friendly, it's a welcoming. And I think especially when you design schools, schools are so important as a hospital, but school, you stay in the school for a long time, you just have 5 years or 11 years or whatever. But the school, I always say we need to design a better school because you're creating memories, People bring in their life the experience of the school, And also when you design a very good school, I think the message from who designed the school, but also for the government, he made the school, is to say, I take care about you. And I think this message is so important. That's why I sometimes come crazy to see so better, terrible buildings, The message behind a bad building is we are not caring enough about you. We don't care about your memory. We don't care about your experiences. So that's why, as the question in the beginning, why architects are so important, which I believe is very important. You know? And sometimes I feel the architects, or in this case the worker foundation, they do much more work than politicians. Politician is a little bit disappear sometimes. I'm not sure they have very clear idea about the future. No? Well, I talk about my country. Sorry, maybe there are places, there are better places than Italy, which is a fantastic country. But sometimes I feel they don't have a clue. They just do. We do an hospital, but they don't know the major reason. And then what they criticize is the distance between competence and politics is coming far, 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 far away. So you really need that. That's why I'm saying architects are very important. A politician is very important too. And when the politics is not strong enough, we alone to try to driving this force to make a better building, take care about the public spaces, design a hospital and school and public building to care about community. Also, I show you this. Sorry, I was a little bit short, but design a little things inside of a large neighborhood is the first step to make the change, because you can't change everything in one time. You need a lot of steps. So just putting something inside, and this creating a sort of contagious. Architecture is a contagious as beauty. You know, beauty is contagious, which is this time is a better word, not contagious in a bad way, but the beauty is a contagious. You know, help people to make maybe another building better than you. That's it.
So, Nigel, now turning to you, why are healthy buildings not the norm? Is it because people are scared they're more expensive? And I'm sure it's a question maybe somebody's wondering, are they much more expensive?
Well, I mean, what we're finding, and certainly post-pandemic, is there's a huge demand for outside space. Every building we talk about, they want ideally the best quality air. They like external terraces, they like green spaces, they like the social interaction of people coming together. And I think that there's definitely a change in people trying to produce healthy buildings. At the end of the day, the productivity, the happiness of your team is reinforced if they're in a better working environment. You have less days sick, they're in a better environment, they can be more innovative, more creative, they can focus better. And ideally, they've got better amenities, better quality food, they've got a gym, they've got health. And then that starts on kind of a role of a better kind of quality of life. And I think that's really what we're seeing mostly. There's obviously some tired buildings from the 1960s and 70s, which are a challenge. And again, there's opportunities to refit and repurpose those. But I think that the people we're seeing now are really looking at their team and their organisation are really trying to put people in better quality space if they can.
So we can go ahead. I have many more questions here, but I'm sure a lot of people in the audience also have some questions. So before continuing, I just wanted to ask if there are any questions from the audience that we would like to pose for our guest speakers. Everybody's shy tonight.
How would you, for Nigel, I just heard about the 60s buildings and I thought that was really interesting. Yeah. Because of course, coming from a country like Spain, we have so many buildings to repurpose. So I would like to know if you have any thoughts on how to approach a problem like this and make them healthier.
Okay, so we're fortunate working with Norman that there's a building in New York on Madison Avenue which we're repurposing. We're being able to refit the building and change its life, and it will become a much better office building in the future. We're able to replace the cladding, the glass, which is the performance, introduce more daylight, put in better air systems within that building. That's an exception perhaps. There are other buildings. Office buildings have a higher floor-to-ceiling height than residential buildings. They can be converted into hospital space. They can be converted into more residential spaces. So there's a lot of effort really thinking about those buildings. And sometimes we're keeping the structure, We have another building in London where we're keeping the structure of the building, and then we're recladding, which is a building on Bond Street. So there's things that you can do, and I think you just need to be creative as you do it.
Thank you. Any more questions? Marina, I did want to ask you, what key policy changes are we needing in our regulations to bring all these factors that we've been talking about to make it happen on a more day-to-day occurrence?
Yeah, so I think going back to what you were mentioning, the sad reality is that we should not need regulation to do things that are better for the environment or better for people, but the sad truth is that without sometimes political measures, change doesn't happen as it should. So we see very, very few countries with really robust regulations in climate performance. You have a lot of plans for decarbonization in many countries, but they're not really tied to really robust regulations when it comes to determining the built environment. Europe performs fairly well in that sense, but that's not a norm globally. So the first thing is ensuring that those standards, those plans at the national level are translated to robust regulations, because we're not just talking about an environmental issue, we're talking about ensuring that we keep our planet inhabitable. So it should not be optional. It's perceived as something optional. It's perceived as an extra benefit. But it should be the fundamental baseline, ensuring that whatever we do, and particularly when it comes to building, they're there for the long run. We still have buildings that are centuries and centuries old that are fully operational. So buildings are there for the long run. So we have to ensure that they're what we say future-proofed. And future-proofing means ensuring they're resilient to the impacts of climate change, that they can withstand a changing climate, and that they're zero emissions, and really zero emissions. And within all of that, that obviously they support cleaner indoor air, improved exposure to natural light, improved exposure to greenness, and all of those determinants that we know are fundamental to health and well-being.
So thinking about that, Mario, how in Cremona, I understand the hospital is a local council contracted building.
Yeah, it's a public building. Yeah.
How were they so enlightened with that tender?
Well, I think this project was one of the first projects in Italy where they made a very good brief. They have a very good, clear idea what they want. That's why you can make a good building, because depending on the quality of the brief. And I think they're really working hard to make really questions, and they really studies, and they're using a lot of consultancy. Sometimes competition like this, they are not good enough to give a very good answer. That's the problem and then it's difficult to make a decision because it's too vague, you know. So I think there was very ambition to make something very nice. And it wasn't international, it was a big company they participated, and they're really looking, it's always a difficult moment when you're looking for a landmark, but you want to see something working well, and at the same time we need to be sustainable, and at the same time need to be for community. You need to put in, the ambition of the program is very high, and I think it was very good. So I think they was very courage to make that choice, but it's nice to work with competent people from the government, you know, because this is a public building, you know, and they really make an effort to make a new generation of public buildings, especially in Italy, because the last period of time building was building in 1980, 1985, so they're out of rules of energy performance and earthquake security, so there's a big change it's a huge program of change, hospital everywhere in Italy, and that is a sign of something good. There's ambition of the government to really improve the quality of service for care people, and then I think we need to take the challenger, you know, and push a little bit more, transforming that opportunity of this building, which is a service building, in a sitting opportunity. You know, it's something more than hospital. It's mainly a destination for everybody, and need to be something more than only a cure. You know, that's why this idea of a park, the place, and people really. My ambition said, oh, this Sunday, we go to the restaurant at the hospital. I find fantastic, no, because it's a beautiful restaurant. And then I go jogging in the park of the hospital. No? So you're just reducing the idea hospital is something nasty or difficult. It's really very close to people. And then you need to join by design things in a special way. So that's why it's amazing. It's beautiful design public building. No? You see you can really make the change. And
I tell you, a lot of people in our company, they've seen that hospital, and it's an inspiration, definitely. Yeah. And Nigel, with all the work you've been doing in hospital buildings, what is your vision now for the future designs in future hospitals? Where's it going to go?
Well, I think we've been pretty thrilled with the collaboration with the very enlightened Mayo Clinic. And I do think the flexibility and the technology is really key. And I just think that you have to also, you have a counterpoint between trying to make sure that the patient and the family members are in an environment which is comfortable for them, it's spa-like, calming, while you also have this incredible technology. And I think that that's going to be something we're going to have to watch in the next 10, 15, 20 years. And I think it's important that the buildings are resilient from a sustainability point of view as much as anything else, so that they can be adapted in 50, 60, 70 years' time. And I think then hopefully we've done our job well.
Done our bit. So, Marina, last question for you. Technology, people now talking about AI and lots of different things. How do you think all that can influence to create healthier buildings and, in the end, healthier societies?
Look, we have a lot of ambiguous feelings with AI, and it's coming much faster than I think any of us can control or work around. But one of the things that we're trying to use AI a lot better for is for building system-wide models that can allow us to better assess a system and to better design a system. So digital twins that are much improved because of AI, and that can allow us to model different scenarios and to understand performance under different conditions is one of the things where we see that AI can help the most, particularly when it comes not to a self-standing, contained indoor environment within a building, but when we talk about a city and the multiple interactors within a city, you have many systems that interact together, and you have on top of that the human psychology of an urban center that is really, really hard to model. So we're hoping that with AI we can start to understand a bit better how to design not only buildings, but cities that are composed of many aspects of the built environment in ways that are much more much better prepared for climate change and for a growing population, an aging population, and a completely changing health profile in most centers.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much to all of you, especially thank you for your generosity.
Thank you.
For being here and sharing that with us. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mario. Thank you. Thank you. I will now ask Joseph Allen to come to the stage and tell us about his work on the Healthy Buildings Programme. Thank you. Thank you very much.
It's a real honor to be here with you today. Thank you to the Norman Foster Foundation. Thank you to Bupa. I'm going to be talking about healthy cities on the horizon. And when talking about cities, we start with buildings. They're the building blocks of cities, of course. And I want to start by asking you all a question. What is your indoor age? We spend 90% of our time indoors. When we turn 90, we'll have spent 81 years breathing indoor air. We have become an unintentional indoor species. This is having a massive impact on our health, yet buildings are often an afterthought. I have spent a career doing forensic investigations of sick buildings, cancer clusters in buildings, toxic chemicals in schools, disease outbreaks in healthcare settings where people have died. The reality is buildings can make us sick or keep us well. The role of buildings and disease wasn't always an afterthought. In 1859, Florence Nightingale said these words: "Fresh air from open windows, the only defense a true nurse either asks or needs." In the early 1900s, based on her work and the work of other doctors and nurses, we had our first health-based ventilation standards. Then we lost our way. We are in the sick building era, ushered in by a historic mistake in the 1970s with the promulgation of a standard that lowered ventilation rates in nearly every indoor space we spend our time, and which represented a gross departure from earlier health-based ventilation targets. The standard for acceptable indoor air quality has the problem right in the name. Acceptable is unacceptable. We want standards for healthy indoor air quality. This departure from earlier health-focused ventilation to lower, merely acceptable ventilation targets marks the birth of the sick building era. The year 2020 marked a major turning point in the history of ventilation. The pandemic, caused by a virus that spreads nearly entirely indoors and fills room like cigarette smoke, found an ally in buildings designed to minimal acceptable ventilation standards. As I sit here talking, I'm emitting aerosols or particles from my lungs. You're emitting particles from your lungs. Depending on how the building is designed and operated, it could be that 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5% of the air you're breathing right now just came out of the lungs of everyone else in this room. Yeah, think about that. COVID hastened trends already underway. It's a picture I took yesterday at the foundation. The healthy buildings movement was not new. Norman's been talking about breathable buildings for decades, connecting buildings back to nature, but the pandemic is accelerating adoption. This has also led to an awakening that bad indoor air is not just impacting our lungs. There are studies linking air pollution, including indoor air pollution, with anxiety, depression, suicide ideation, neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease. Outdoor air pollution penetrates into our buildings. In fact, most of the outdoor air pollution you breathe happens indoors. That's counterintuitive, but it's true. My own research has shown links between indoor air and higher order cognitive function, decision-making performance. And our latest research, just published a few months ago, whereas our earlier work focused on one half of the brain, thinking about strategic decision-making, we also found links between indoor air quality and creativity performance of office workers. The most recent research from our team, published just 2 weeks ago, found a link between the lungs and the gut microbiome. Women in Uganda use kerosene lamps for lighting. In our first study, we showed that switching from kerosene lamps to an in-country designed, low-cost solar lighting intervention reduced exposures to air pollutants by 90%, up to 90%. Before that, more than half the women had breathing problems, but that dropped significantly after switching and moving to solar lighting. But our new study showed that this didn't just help the lungs. We also saw changes in both bacteria and virus in their gut. People with changes in their gut had 32% lower chance of having breathing symptoms. So some of the key takeaways: improving indoor air quality not only reduced risk from airborne viruses, not only does it improve brain health, it also lowers breathing problems, but also supports a healthier gut microbiome, the helpful microbes in our bodies that we don't always think about, but that play a big role in keeping us healthy. The reality is we are at a precipice. The World Health Organization has declared clean indoor air a fundamental human right. Yet, the current standards governing our buildings are not based on health and have not been for decades. We need to be thinking about buildings that have clean air, clean water, nature-inspired design, acoustical, thermal, and lighting performance, healthier materials, all sourced with renewable, clean energy, using energy-efficient technologies that conserve water and are also resilient and responsive to threats. All of this has raised a question. Can we have buildings that are sustainable, healthy, and resilient? The answer is unequivocally yes. I present to you 270 Park Avenue. All-electric tower, sourced with renewable energy. Double that minimum ventilation rate. Triple filtered air, healthier materials. Measuring indoor air quality every second throughout the entire building. This officially marks the beginning of the end of the sick building era. In this story of the sick building era transitioning to healthy buildings is a lesson for healthy cities. Similar to how we lost our way when it came to designing buildings for health, we've similarly lost our way on designing cities for health. Globally, we face cascading perils of climate, health, and governance. Extreme heat, flooding, drought, wildfires, like these pictures from our work supporting communities in Hawaii and California devastated by recent wildfires caused by our changing climate. We know that buildings consume 40% of global energy. In some cities, it's over 70%. Solving the climate crisis starts with our buildings. On governance, crises of governance, we see the rise of autocratic leaders in surprising places. This has left us with crises of mental health. 1 in 8 globally living with a mental health disorder. A fraying of the social fabric. Air pollution that kills millions of people annually. A lack of clean water, lack of affordable housing, inequality, crime, cities that are not walkable, that lack public transportation, that suffer from food deserts and urban heat islands. The opportunity in front of us is the health-first era for cities. A focus on cities that provides safety and security for all, opens access to nature and water, nurtures through providing opportunity for play and recreation, celebrates a vibrant art culture, inspires awe and wonder, fills us with joy and happiness, addresses affordability, equitability, and accessibility, with responsible consumption and production, reduction of waste, conservation of water, bringing healthy food nearby, that are engines of economic opportunity for all, places that are made for walking and easy transport, cities that foster connection, community, cohesion, as you said last night, places that are less lonely, more friendly. How to do it? We need to see cities as a catalyst for change. You also said this last night. The challenges may be different across cities, but the same principles apply. What do we focus on? We focus on urban design, architecture, and city science. We follow a public health model for cities based on prevention because, as the saying goes, when public health works, nothing happens. We replace old definitions of health with newer ones that focus on the state of complete physical, mental, social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. The solutions must be data-driven. The classic business maxim is, what gets measured gets managed. And as Lady Foster reminded us yesterday, we must move away from describing problems to acting on them. More practice, more solutions, less talk. Said less blah, blah, blah. Winston Churchill famously declared, we shape our buildings, thereafter they shape us. He could have added, thereafter they shape our cities, our societies, our health. Cities are populations of people, populations of buildings, each with stories. Stories of our past, stories of today, stories of a positive vision for the future, one where we place human health, dignity, happiness, and well-being at the center of our cities. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Joseph, for your reflections and your insights on how buildings and cities and the relationship between buildings and cities have shaped our health and our societies. And thank you, Norman, for joining us for this final slot on our cycle of public debates. We have been collaborating for the past 3 years. We wanted to learn and to get the experts' voices here with us in order to understand how the collaboration and the cooperation of healthcare professionals and architects could be improved, and what were the outcomes we could expect from that relationship. Looking back into these 3 years, we are very fortunate to have had many experts here in the room. And for example, in our first debate, we had Beatriz Colomina, and she shared with us how health has shaped buildings and architecture throughout history. Dr. Maria Neira from the World Health Organization, she also shared how that collaboration between healthcare professionals and architecture and could improve public health outcomes as well. So having had all these experts' voices in this room and highlighting the importance of this collaboration, at which point are we now, Joseph?
Well, I think we're, like I said, I think we're at the beginning of the end of this sick building era, and I think many things are driving it. Great design, great architecture. But I think other things are happening. One is the advancement of measurement technology. So it used to be the case, for example, it used to be very expensive to measure the air quality in a space like this. Now it's quite cheap. And what that has led to is big power shifts. It's a democratization of knowledge about how buildings are performing. You used to have to rely on the building owner to tell you, how is the building performing? Now people can pull out their own air quality sensor and they'll tell you. So I think awareness is rising, a lot driven by data, certainly a lot through the pandemic. And I also think great business leaders are recognizing that these buildings are tools to keep their employees healthy, happy, safe, and they also lead to business benefits. If you think better in a building, you perform better, you're out sick less often, you're going to be a better employee. There's a straight business case for healthy buildings. So I think all of this is driving or continued to drive awareness.
So that's a positive outcome in this past years, we could say.
For sure, and it's notable. This is really accelerating in the past 3 years.
So we know that there are 4 factors that determine health. First one is genetics, heritage. Second is healthcare systems. Then we have lifestyles, and we have the environment. And all these 4 interact together in order to determine how genetic heritage that cannot be changed, but they can influence how genes express themselves, and they either cause diseases or not. So the initial conclusion would be, why don't we act on the factors that we can change? And for example, we can change lifestyles. And at Sanitas, we are doing that by promoting personalized health plans for people so that their lifestyles improve. And most recently, we are now refining those by enriching the data with the genetic profile of individuals. So that's one aspect we can influence. But then there is the environment, and the environment, it means not only the nature, but also the built environment, and that's where most of the people live nowadays. And we know that from some scientific evidence, like Mark Newensen shared with us, that, for example, green areas have a big part in making our cities healthier. Some data is, if we increase 30% the trees in our cities, that could lower the temperature of that city by 1.3 degrees Celsius. And that would mean, in turn, that 30% of diseases caused by heat could be avoided. Our chair at the University of Navarra, the Sanitas Health and Environment Chair, also concluded that by increasing 30% the vegetation in cities, we could be avoiding 3,000 deaths per year in our country. So green areas are one factor. Then we have heat island in cities, and heat island is a great problem that is increasingly putting our health systems under strain. We have data there too. Our chair again showed that in Madrid and Barcelona, we could measure that 3.6% of deaths in Madrid in the period of 2014 and 2018 were caused by extreme heat. And the same goes with Barcelona with a percentage of 0.6%. Then we do have air pollution, which is a priority health damaging factor, but also mobility. So, in light of all this data, Norman, if we were to design a city from scratch, what would be your priorities, putting health at the center of that idea?
How to redesign the world in 5 seconds. The big picture of cities and regions as you diminish and come down to the scale of the individual building. There are common denominators which link them all, and you've touched on the issue of air quality, you've mentioned nature. We know all the facts. Everything comes down to education, communication. That's what this evening is about. This is what the gathering of exchanging ideas. So we know all of those factors. We're starting to get the data. And if I wanted to make a massive leap into the future, I'd say, if taking an optimistic view, you have the potential to have an extraordinary revolution. I mean, if you come down to the scale of the individual building, of the hospital, then all those people cleaning the hospital, it's now robotics, or it could be. It's on the cusp, it's on the edge. You can see all the signs there. So nobody's going to waste time cleaning the hospital. All that's going to be automated with robots. All of those individuals in the hospital running around the corridors, carrying medical supplies and drugs, forget it. It'll be seamless, invisible, in the structure. Tiny drones, delivering. So you have the potential for less people doing the important, but in terms of healthcare, insignificant. If somebody can take care of hygiene, if somebody can take care of delivery, and it doesn't involve people, then people can then focus on the priority, which is conquering disease. And then you free up all the infrastructure of the hospital is perfect for research laboratories. So the hospital, and we saw earlier the pursuit of high quality reception areas, hospitality and hospitals, it's the same root word. So you start to have the potential where the hospital can be an extraordinary generator. As we heard earlier, the potential for the park. Let's go for a walk in the park near the hospital. There's another full circle where if the hospital is about birth, then the cemetery is traditionally about dying. But in the 19th century, the cemetery was a gathering space. It was a public park. So you could, once you start to look at the functions that come together in a city, there's a natural synergy. So you come back to the idea of the neighborhood. You come full circle. And it's healthier walking rather than driving. Driving is sedentary. Physical activity is good for your health. You live longer. And neighborhoods, you don't die from loneliness, or you're less likely to. And if you bring, as we heard earlier, food to the source, you use less water, less fertilizer, less energy, no transport costs, and you save nature and biodiversity. So all these factors really start to work together. But it all comes down, in the end, to attitude of mind and leadership and knowledge. So if you have somebody who's running the health service and they're denying the power of vaccines, then it's time to get a bit worried. And if you know that the compact city is healthier mentally and physically, if you know that the compact city is half the carbon footprint of the car-borne sprawling city, if you know that you want to save nature, your compact city will save nature. If you say, I don't give a damn about that, where do people want to go? You look at all the surveys, they all want to go to the compact city. So why aren't people learning those lessons? And why, for example, when you expand a city, take any city, take this city, Madrid, and you look at the expansion. The expansion is not replicating, which is outside the front door here, which is the street and the park. It's a dormitory monoculture, and new cities are being created on that model, notwithstanding the pioneering work of Joe, extraordinary team. So the knowledge is there. And paradoxically, it's not about money. It costs less to actually do what I'm talking about. But even if you didn't care about the first cost, the cost in use, the cost in terms of saving healthcare, preventing rather than curing.
So the second question would be, why does it happen? Why is it not?
You need more people like the Ferrugias. And in terms of promoting knowledge, you need more people like yourselves. And you run hospitals, so you could learn from those lessons. I'm sure you are doing, as we talked over lunch. I know you are.
Mm. Great. So that was very enlightening, even if it was a very difficult question. So thank you for that. In this last debate, we also learned about the healthier buildings and how do they relate with the cities in which they are built, and how they need to be thought of with the concept of One Health in their concept and in their design. So there is a responsibility, as Norman put it now, of people building healthcare buildings primarily in order to be sustainable, so as not to damage biodiversity, which we know it's a shield for our individuals' health and public health, but also to promote health within the buildings. So could hospitals, healthcare buildings, public buildings like schools, libraries be role models for healthier construction and healthier architecture?
Yes, absolutely. And I'll build off something Norman was saying, a couple threads, that similar how we want to design cities, that we know what types of cities attract people. Similarly, we know what types of buildings attract people. The companies that want people back because they know there's value in this face-to-face interaction, that there's value in bringing people together, have designed buildings that you want to go to. That's different. That hasn't always been the case. And as I think about the healthcare setting, I like how Norman described, the future of cities and where we see this going. I see the same thing for buildings, where you have buildings that are hyper-responsive, autonomously changing its function based on what's happening in the room. In a healthcare setting, this might be a patient room that has one person in it, but you have a surge situation and there can be 12 people in a room. Well, is that room an air quality system responding autonomously to deliver better air quality in that moment? And the answer is we can do that right now. We don't. We have the monitors that tell us when the levels change to some time that the building needs to act. But right now it's very manual. But the future is coming where we have the data. It's talking to the building systems. The room changes in response to something happening, and the building changes in response, all without any human interaction. It's just being responsive and adaptive to the needs of the people in the space. So the same thing applies as cities as we think about just basic air quality inside of a building.
So in light of all this data and all these best practices, and also the urgent need to further collaborate between the two disciplines, architecture and medicine, my question for both of you would be, are you optimistic for the future? So, Norman?
Totally optimistic, of course. And I think your reminder about Beatrice on an earlier public debate, reminding us, and it's worth a degree of repetition, the birth of what we call the modern movement was really, although it's become perhaps one of style, was never about style. It was a transition into a healthier building period. And if you look at all those early buildings, they're about sliding glass or dissolving the barrier between the outside and the inside. Those sanatoria were outdoor terraces where the beds were wheeled, the benefits of fresh air. All the clues were there. It's kind of degenerated into one of style. But we're coming, I think, full circle in terms of recognizing, and the roots in Florence Nightingale also, I mean, manifest. We need to combine the lessons from the past with the technology of today. And a lot of those people in those beds at the beginning of the 20th century, with polio, with iron lungs, one forgets the power of vaccines. We take it for granted that we don't have kids in a metal cylinder, the iron lung. Vaccine has... So the power of research on modern medicine, holistically combined with designing, with the knowledge that we have and the research that people like Joe come up with, it's a fantastic new world.
Excellent. What about you, Joe?
Of course, totally an optimist. And I think we have to be. Being an optimist doesn't mean the work is done. In fact, I don't think there should be a healthy buildings program at Harvard. Buildings should just be healthy by design. So how do we get to that future where I'm out of business? I want to be out of business of healthy buildings. It's very simple. We need to be sure that we're putting these strategies that we know, the technology is there, the knowledge is there, into codes and standards such that all of these healthy building strategies benefit everyone, everywhere. And until it's driven into code and required, and we can monitor and verify that performance is to that healthy spec, we're not going to achieve this healthy buildings for all movement. I think we're on the cusp of it. I think we're close. So I'm an optimist, but there's still a lot of work ahead. And I hope not to be here in a couple of years and we're done.
I think that planning has become a dirty word because it's associated with control and inhibition. And codes, out of the best intentions in the world, are also seen as kind of minimum standards. So we need a changing of attitudes on the legislation. The legislation could change to encourage positive change. Planning has produced some of the best neighborhoods, some of the best cities, and also planning has also, in other interpretations, become totally repressive and negative. But so all of these have to be turned into a power for good.
So thank you for giving me reasons to be an optimistic myself. So I'm an optimistic, I declare that. So, but still recognizing that there's still work to do. And so we hope we continue this collaboration because it has been really opening new paths for our company, for our way of thinking about healthcare buildings, the environment and health as a whole. And because our work doesn't stop here, I can share with you that we will publish all the insights that we have collected all throughout these 3 years in a book that we will launch together at the end of this year. So that will be one of the next steps. And then, of course, we will continue collaborating by sponsoring the Norman Foster Institute that Bupa, our parent company, is sponsoring. So with that in mind and with the training of the future professionals, a final remark from you, Norman, to the new generations of doctors, nurses, architects.
Follow the best practice.
Very good.
Okay, so that's it. And with this, close this cycle. Thank you very much for joining.
Always great.
Always.
So good. Thank you.
Thank you so
Really
much.
great. Nicely done.
Thank you.
Great.